Tom, aka Gedeon, here for Star Frontiers Gamer. Today is Friday, so therefore we have another Frontiersman Friday. Issue number 12 of the Star Frontiersman magazine is going to be reviewed. So jumping right into it, here we have the cover of the magazine. It's this is not a bad cover for a fan magazine. And obviously I have a later download of the magazine because DWD Studios logo was retroactively added to some of these magazines. But there is a cover, there is an image in here that really should have been the cover of this magazine. It was drawn by Shell, and we'll get to that shortly. If it had been a colorized version, I would have slapped it right on the cover without a bit of hesitation. But let's move right along. So the first article is Frontier Feedback. Now, this is basically errata for the digitally remastered. You see here Alpha Dawn remastered errata. There's a lot of it. So I mean, this is the kind of thing you look at and then move on. It's of you might be asking, what's the digitally remastered? Well, back in the day, Bill Logan had a license that allowed him to produce copies of the rules and modules that were digitally remastered, basically reworded, maybe new artwork, rearranged. And so that's what he did. There was another fan who had a license that allowed him to do optical scans and offer those for free on the web. So the digitally remastered were fun. They weren't just an optical scan. You could cut and paste out of them. They were proper PDFs. And I'm not sure if you were able to cut and paste out of the optical scans that were produced that were out there. But I downloaded both to my computer. But that's what the digitally remastered were, and I liked having them. Especially since the Alpha Dawn one had basically polyplate armor. You had full, which would have been like Stormtrooper armor, and then you had partial, which would have been the like potentially the armor that the rebels wore to infiltrate the planets the Ewoks lived on. To when they sent the strike team in, they had some armor, but it wasn't fully encasing. So that would have been like the partial polyplate. So I liked that being added to the Alpha Dawn rules. That was a little addition that Bill Logan added. I just want to point out this alien. This is the only artwork I've ever seen for this alien. It's just randomly put in here, but it's cool. It's by Ben from '94, and it's a pencil sketch, color pencil sketch, and just it's a cool looking alien. And there's like little ribbons. This is a robe, but there's little ribbons and medals here, so that's kind of suggestive of some sort of military meritocracy type of culture. The rope, some sort of shoulder boards here to this robe. So this is like a some sort of uniform for those guys. I just think he's cool. I was just kind of geeking out on that this morning as I reviewed the issue. Time Bomb. This is a piece of fiction about a game report, and the game report is about using Star Frontiers rules to play a Galaxy Rangers adventure. So if you're interested into Galaxy Rangers, you might be like, ooh, well, that's of interest to me. It's quite long. It's 29 pages. It is the lion's share of the magazine. And again, one of my criticisms, keep the page count down so that it's easier for the layout staff, the editorial staff, consistent and have a more consistent magazine. So I would have cut this particular article in half and done a part 1, part 2. But it is a game report, Galaxy Rangers game, but it's done as fiction. So that kind of sands off some of the rougher edges of a game report and makes it easier to read, I think, more entertaining. So that's there. And I realize some people are just not into the fiction. Others are. I continue to welcome fiction to the fan magazine. Happy to have it. Just anything this big. I think has to get cut into two pieces and done as a part one, part two. Because if you're limiting the magazine to 40 pages and then you get a piece of fiction that's 29, I mean, it's like boom, that's everything. It doesn't leave you a lot of space for anything else. So no spoilers on the story. You can read that for yourself. Now, next up, we get Sathar briefing report by some dude named Tom Barrel Gyrojet in 357. And it's really a 2-page analysis of all the activity that we saw from the Sathar in canon, modules, and rules. And I wanted this to have the title Sathar Summit, that there was a Sathar Summit within the frontier where all the experts came together and debated, and they wrote a report. But somehow it got titled Sathar Briefing Report, which always irritated me. But I wasn't the editor, so had no control. So you see here, classified material. I wrote it as if it was a real report. And then I noticed something now that I'm a little bit critical of on myself. In here, I cite that such information is in appendix such and such, and then other information's in appendix such and such. I wrote these are fictitious appendices that are not part of this report. It's just a 2-page article. I kind of feel like I should have actually created those fictitious appendices and added them to the article. Would have fluffed it up to another, a 3rd page, which would have been fine. So, and I got to say, this artwork here by Shell of these 3 Sathar, one of them's grabbing, this woman's Starlar Ranger here. This is fantastic. This is absolutely fantastic artwork. And if this had been colorized, it should have been on the cover. And they've actually done 2-tone. They did do some 2-tone covers later on in the Star Frontiersman's print run. And so, maybe if you had, filtered the tone, filtered this to be, I don't know if the gray works, but this just would have been a fantastic cover. I mean, that is absolutely spot on. And these Sathar don't conform to the classic artwork in the rule book. They're like extra creepy. They got an extra slice of creepy. Shell did great work with these. I'm absolutely one of my favorite pieces. I can't gush about this one enough. So Sathar Summit. Basically, I analyzed all of the reactions of the Sathar to the civilized spacefaring species. And because there's this dichotomy that doesn't make sense. You have in the first Sathar war, this all-out, the Sathar just show up, they don't even communicate, and they just try to eradicate the frontier species, the core 4. And then in other times, you see where they have not tried to eradicate a species like the Zurikor and have made them an ally or client species. The same thing is happening with the Memni in the Beyond the Frontier series of Nighthawks modules. I sat and I thought about it, and I decided that the deciding line was this, I called the eradication response, the Shiva response. I labeled it the Shiva response, Sathar Shiva response. And that when they encountered a starfaring species that could actually fight them on par, their response was, we must eradicate, which is what they did to the Iorna on the Day of Doom 900 years before the Volturnus modules take place. So the Iorna, we're told, had been sending out interstellar ships to explore space around them, and so I have hypothesized that those Iorna ships ran into the Sathar. The Sathar, captured some of them, hypnotized them, got information from them, managed to get information maybe from the computers on the ship, and then backtracked to Volturnus and wiped out the planet, destroying the civilization with only about 150 Eorna surviving what they labeled the Day of Doom. Um, so again, that's a classic Shiva response, and it was successful. First Sathar War was a non-successful Shiva response. And then we've got similar, somewhat presumed history going on in the Rim. The Rim races were introduced in Zebulon's Guide. So we get a little bit of that also going on there in what's written into the Huma and the Ifshnits. So some of that you have to extrapolate and presume, but you see again that there was a Shiva response there and an attempt to dominate the Rim. When the Shiva response fails, they then go into this transitional type of activity where they attempt to subvert agents and infiltrate and cause trouble through infiltration and subversion. And so that becomes phase 2, where if they can't out and out. And, there's some discussion here about Sathar clans and what we know, what we've observed from the modules. And then some recommendations from the Sathar Summit in section 3. And then this little shadow box here is some campaign and adventures using the Sathar report. So it's just a short little article by me, and one of my favorites. Then we got, you get a double barrel of Sathar motivation here. You have Chris Putnam wrote Motivation of the Sathar. Now, this is written by a philosopher of some sort who is residing. He's been kicked out of, he was part of think tanks analyzing the Sathar, but he was espousing minority opinions that were not the majority opinions. So he got kicked out of the think tank, and so he's been just kind of hanging out on Groth, which is a light population world, at a meditation center on Groth. And so this is him talking to you. It's very informal. It's very relaxed style of writing, and he's talking about he's analyzing use of proxies, and some of his analysis differs a little bit from mine. But when you get down here to Sathar psychology, I really like this. For me, this is the takeaway section of this particular article. This Sathar psychology section here, he's really analyzing the evolution of their psychology as a species from the Proto-Sathar as they evolved into the Sathar and why they are the way they are. And it goes back way back in history to it's hypothetical, obviously, but it goes way back in history. And I just think this is really good material. Cautionary note and conclusion. Again, this guy's advocating, let's not build so many heavy cruisers, and let's put the funding into just detecting the agents that are out there. And so that's very much something you could play with in your game, where there are people advocating, no, let's divert the funding from starships. That's not what's needed. Let's divert it into detecting agents and saboteurs. It's definitely an interesting article. On the qualifies as fluff for your game. It's material you would certainly use as fluff in the background going on. Next, we get the versatile ion drive, and this is a great analysis of the ion drive, why it's cheaper and better to use than atomics, because atomics, you get full throttle, baby. I feel the need for speed with my atomic drive, but the ion engine has got some limitations. Maximum speed is 1. So it's kind of slow, but yet it's got a lot of power. And you have there's a cost analysis, there's a benefit analysis of using the ion window to defeat long-range scanners. And it discusses the contradictory statements within Nighthawks concerning whether or not energy sensors can peer through the ion window, and then other places that there's a clear statement that says you can't. So he then introduces and then the discussion on fuel here is really great. But he then introduces this scanning to locate a ion drive ship trying to hide behind its ion window. And he introduces all of these modifications to that role. And and there's a note in here that on average it took 3 turns, which would be 30 minutes time in game, to localize the ion drive ship hiding behind an ion window using his system. So interesting. There's new equipment. And I have to write a note to self to add this new equipment to my master equipment list spreadsheet. I don't think it got added, but he's introducing a distress buoy for ion drive ships to drop a distress buoy, and it'll start throwing out a distress signal once it's a certain distance. It'll be outside the jamming window if the enemy ship is using a white noise broadcaster. And then he introduces the ion drive decoy. The decoys in Nighthawks are effectively atomic drive. But so this is a ion drive. It's well reasoned, it's well balanced, and very much worth adding to the game. And then there's a deluxe distress buoy as well. So 3 pieces of Nighthawks equipment in this article, very much worth adding to your game. And like, for instance, this ion drive buoy, it's decoy. You can't add that many. It's like 1 per 5 hull sizes. So hull size 5 ship up through 9 can have 1 ion decoy, and then over 10, you could have 2. So you're not going to load that many into the ship. But one of the things you could do is you could set up the buoy before the enemy ship is too close to radiate an ion window. Now, it only has the 1 ion drive, so it can only cover 1 hex, 10,000 kilometers, or a sphere with a 5,000 kilometer radius. And a ship big enough to have an ion decoy would have multiple engines, so it would be able to cover a number of hexes equal to the number of, well, you throttle back your ion window for the ship, so it's only 1 hex, and you use this, and you send your decoy and yourself off in different directions, forcing the enemy to make a decision about who he's going to chase. And so that's certainly a tactic that you could introduce with this into your game if you were the player using this on your ion drive ship. So as I reread this, I thought of that, and I was like, oh, I really kind of like this. I want any commerce campaign where we're using a big Nighthawks freighter that has ion drives, probably ought to have an ion decoy. So that's definitely worth adding. This here is the Industrious Ifshnit, and I love this article for one simple reason. The artwork actually matches the racial description. If you're not aware, the artwork within Zebulon's guide for the Ifshnit was dwarves in space. And I hated it because it completely did not match. I mean, it just looked like a space dwarf. But this artwork by C.J. Williams, absolutely fabulous, absolutely matches the description of the Ifshnit. So I loved this article. It's a review of the Ifshnit. He recycles that little bit of fluff fiction at the beginning of Zebulon's guide, where an Ifshnit trader is trying to barter a weapon with the Azarian, to introduce that. I think he should have written something new to go with this, but the rest of it is a re-looking at the Ifshnit as a player character race, and it's much more full, it's much more expanded, and I do believe, if I remember correctly, there are some suggested names in here, the types of names the Ifshnits like to use. So if I remember correctly, I didn't fully reread this when I was reviewing for this. Then Planetary Brief. This is Dixon Star. It's by Richard Shadow Shack Rose, who writes great material. And it's just a quick one-page planetary map. And it departs from canon. It specifies a docking station orbiting it. That's not actually canon. That would be something new. Certainly something. A docking station around Lako makes a lot of sense, particularly after the Second Sathar War period. That would introduce it at that point. That docking station has 6 fighter craft for it's a for defensive measure. It's not much, but it's a little bit, and it completely ignores the planet history section here. Completely ignores Lako's war, and it might be that Richard's that he's ignoring the Zebulon's Guide materials that are background on Lako. So this might have been very intentional to be an Alpha Dawn strictly planetary brief on Lako, because I know I know Shadow Shack's opinion about Zebulon's Guide. we'll just say he's not a fan. So it might be that this is just strictly an Alpha Dawn review brief for Dixon Star, is how I would look at this. It completely ignores a lot more information that is in Zebulon's Guide that informs you about Lako and its history. So it's a good one. But it's very brief, and and right away I flagged it for it differs here, it differs there. So it's not as thorough as it could be, but then again, it might be that it's intended to just be an Alpha Dawn only planetary brief. Next, we get another from Richard Shadow Shack Rose, Ground and Hover Cycle History. It's reviewing the history of all these motorcycle and hover cycle companies within the frontier. It's a fluff piece. It's one page, and it's really good. What I would have loved was that if he had added a chart of all of these motorcycles he talks about within here and hover cycles. And because obviously some of them are going to have different prices and some of them are going to have slightly different performance stats, and I wish he had done that chart. That's my only criticism on this, is I would have loved to had that chart in particular. This company specializes in luxury touring models. They're not going to be quite as fast. They're going to be a little heavier. They're going to it just would have been cool. It just would have been cool to have that, particularly if the players grab a hover cycle to chase somebody, but the bad guy happens to be on a racing cycle that's going to outdistance them. It leads to cool situations in game. Just great potential for the game master. And so you might work with this. You might just go, oh, you know what? I'm gonna create some of these models with slightly different performance and prices. So this was a great piece. It's an easy read. New equipment. One of my hands down favorite articles introduced in the early Star Frontiersman magazines. And this is based off of the big, heavy tri-barrel weapon being used on the cover of the basic game from the Alpha Dawn box set. And right here, this image by a Yazarian. And so it introduces the Yazarian triple barrel gyrojet weapon. It is a heavy weapon, but it's cool and it's kind of fun because we're talking high damage output for the trade-off of greater expense and heavier item to carry. But the article doesn't stop there. It then introduces a slew of new gyrojet weapons. For instance, the Wartech GC6 gyrojet carbine, slightly smaller than a regular rifle. The Wartech GAR-10 gyrojet assault rifle. You've got the Wartech HGR-9 heavy gyrojet rifle, and then the a gyrojet machine gun It's definitely a heavy weapon, must be mounted on a tripod. I mean, look at the weight here. We're talking 25 kilograms. So this is not a lugging it around, unless you're a Dralacite with super high strength. But and then you have the Wartech PGR2 Precision Marksman Gyrojet Rifle. Again, very cool, super long range, and so definitely some extra options, some extra goodies. But I loved that somebody said, "Hey, what's this weapon on the cover of the book?" It's just whatever the artist decided, and why don't we have that in game? We should. So definitely one of my favorite of the goodies articles of the it's Halloween and trick or treat. Here's what's in your bag: a triple gyrojet rifle. Definitely fun for the Yazarian War Master. Core 4 Part 1 is just a review of Dralasites and Humans within setting. I love this artwork from Shell of this group of Dralasites. This is really good. I just love that, especially with the little buds that have dropped off and are running around at the feet of the older Dralasites. Very cool. Then inserted in the middle of the article here, I don't know why the layout choices were a little odd, but there's this little sidebar within this article of a ship that Chris Harper scratch built. It is a agricultural ship from the frontier, conforming to the Star Frontiers vertical deck ethic. And there's a link here, and this link actually works. You can go to the page where a bunch of pictures were posted of his own personal game using these ships, and he talks about scratch building this. These little domes were those little googly eyes. You can glue them on a piece of paper, and they got like a little black plastic iris in there that kind of wobbles around. They were those kind of googly eyes, and he very carefully sliced the back off, removed the plastic iris, painted the crop fields in the bottom of the base, and then re-glued it back together, making that an ag dome for his ship. I thought it was very genius piece of kit bashing. And so this is a totally scratch-built ag ship. And I always meant to make one for myself, and I guess I just kind of forgot. I really need to revisit this and maybe do a tutorial on it. But this is absolutely fabulous piece of kit bashing here on the part of Chris Harper. So I want to promote that. If you're in need of an ag ship, here's how one was built, and it doesn't look all that complicated, does it? So then Humans are reviewed as part of that Core 4 article. Some more artwork by Shell, very good. I mean, look at the old, he's got some older lines here in this man's face. This girl definitely looks younger, like 18, 20. This guy's mid-aged. I mean, he's really done some great artwork where there's nice aging in the faces. I kind of, that always stood out to me. And then Characters Are Us. This is actually a review of the characters section at the starfrontiers.us page, where you can, it's strictly Alphadon only, and no Nighthawk skills can be added. But you can create characters and NPCs in there. And I've actually used these character sheets that are in that section for an online game where, the characters are created in there, and I have editing access. I'm not like a full moderator, but I do have editing access. I was given that way back, so that I could just go in and delete spam when I found it in the website. So I can actually go in and edit anybody's character. So I as a game master use this feature to because I could go in and I could edit your character and add things to it as game master. And so it's still a decent web-based feature for running a character sheet. And my answer to, if you're using, maybe a skilled frontier rules, is just in the big block where you fill in, where you fill in about your character, and it's just a big open space, and you can write an essay there. Just list the skills in there, and it's just as easy to do it there. You can add Nighthawk skills in that section as well. So it's usable. It's not as perfect as I'd like it. I would really love a full web-based utility where you could just click and say, I want to do an Alphadon Nighthawk's character. I want to use, or I want to do a Zebulon's Guide skill system. You can just click on options and then it would, go with that. And, in all of the core races, those from the Rim, as well as the core 4 from the Alphadon book would be nice. But so this, there's not much here for you because they do a list of, he's analyzed all the characters, how many were military PSA, technological, biosocial. Biosocial doesn't get any love. It's only 15, whereas 47 military, 24 technological. How many were male, female, or, Dralacite by race? Verse got the least amount of love. Humans at 43 got the most. PSA by race, interesting analysis. And then a full list of all the characters that existed at that time in 2009. So obviously this list is out of date, but again, the demographics here is interesting. I found it very interesting that Versk were the least popular, that male characters were the most popular, that military characters, again, were the most popular. So there's something there for you. There's a takeaway there for you. Great artwork here by Atomic Knight. I don't know who that is, but that is a great looking Dralacite. And then we get into Inspiration Zone. And this is a Sathar adventure involving a L4 point around a gas giant, and a mining ship discovers a derelict floating there in the L4 point, and that an asteroid has impacted it, and the ship's taken a lot of damage. And this is a ship that is so old, it dates back to the first Sathar War or prior to that, and it appears to be of Sathar design. And so it's got a full. Now the only problem with it is in 2009 there did not exist a good Sathar deck plan. However, you are in luck because if you go to the Frontier Explorer website and then click on the special issues, see over here on the sidebar, you've got Frontier Explorer issues and special issues. Special issues will bring you to the Sathar Destroyer Technical Manual and the UPF Assault Scout Technical Manual produced by Tom Stevens. And if you click on the Sathar Destroyer Technical Manual, you're going to get a glorious tech manual with deck plans, information, deck plans. Look at this cross section on all these decks, and you get every single one of these deck plans in this tech manual. So you might actually consider not clicking on it here to download it. You might consider going to drive-through. It's a pay what you want, and throw a little tip in the tip jar for Tom, because he produced all of this and he did a fabulous job. I mean, there are very few deck plans out there in the vertical arrangement that are this detailed for such a huge ship. I mean, let's just go back to this cross section. We're talking 25 decks and full color. You get the cross section, you get the write-ups on it. This is a highly detailed tech manual. So that little adventure that we were just looking at would work with Tom's deck plan. And so the deck plan would become the space where you would use that for your map as the player characters go in there and find out what happened to the mining crew that entered this ship. What's the story behind the ship just sitting here for decades upon decades, if not a century. And interestingly, there are Sathar. I won't give it away. I just won't give it away. You have to read it. It's only one page. The next up is a piece of fiction, and this was a keep the story going, where somebody would write a little something and then go, next, and the next person would come in and write a little something. It was just keep the story going. So it's a little piece of fiction. This was written in the .us forums, and Clean Cut Rogue, Gergmaster, Will, Humongous, and Woot all contributed to this particular story. I believe these character cards here, these NPC character cards, are the characters within the story. Next, you get characters with class. This was written by Bill Logan. And what this is this is a conversion. This is doing the PSAs within Star Frontiers as classes. This is like a class system for Star Frontiers. So if you wanted to try that, if you've got people who are really stuck in the D20 mindset, um, and of classes, and they just find the skill system of Star Frontiers a little bit. This might be a good way to introduce them to it. I have carefully read this article twice, and then I never used it. I just decided I was not interested. And but there are tables here, tells you what you get at what level, experience, the experience points to advance to the next level. Also, it's very thorough because down here we get income by level. So there are some income tables for skill level. If you're being hired for your level as a medic and you're level 3, there are tables like that within the Alpha Dawn rules. They were thorough. Bill Logan was thorough with this, and he introduced an income by level table. It's much more simplified than the original, but it helps you adjudicate the pay for the NPCs or the player characters. So very thorough. And then you've got a discussion about balancing things. And then here they introduced this versed merchant. I thought that was interesting. And then we get this. This is a table of contents by issue, but then it's like a unified all topics all into one thing. And this is only good through issue 12. So it's not something you would refer to, unless you're just like, I know it's in an early Star Frontiersman, I need to go find an article. So you could use this as a resource for finding something in these early days. But its utility is limited. And then we get classifieds. Now you notice this little photograph here with these miniatures sitting in it. These are miniatures I painted, and the Coke vending machine was a resin piece. I want to say it was produced by Old Crow or ANSI, or I don't think it's available anymore. Probably somebody else has a vending machine, or you could scratch build one. It's not like they're complicated. But this was a vending machine I painted up just because I thought it would be cool. And then I got thinking, when people lose their money in a vending machine and they kind of smash the machine a little bit, imagine how that would play out with the Azarian with Battle Rage. And so I just created this little photograph and this classified here of Bilco's vending, specializing in Battle Rage proof machines. So that was a little fun piece from me. There's some more. There are some more classifieds here. Richard Shadowshack has done a one for within his setting, a motorcycle modification shop, mechanic on Volturnus. This is the ad for it. So another great issue. It is long, 82 pages. Again, a favorite issue for me, because one of my first articles that I really loved writing, the Sathar Summit, and the tri-barrel heavy gyrojet rifle, which I just think is fun. Probably impacts game balance, but it's definitely fun to play with. And there you have it, a review of issue 12 of the Star Frontiersman magazine. Well worth picking up. Make sure you pick up that Sathar Destroyer technical manual. If you don't have that in your files, I somewhere around here, I even have a hard copy. Can't put my hands on it now, but definitely make sure you pick up the technical manuals that Tom put out. Those were special issues of the Star Frontiersman. So this is Tom from Star Frontiers Gamer. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my subscribers. You guys are great. And I will see you in the frontier.